So, let's start. Number 10. The Piri Reis Map, Antarctica without ice. In 1513, Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis drew a world map that looked impressive for its time. Europe, North Africa, and South America were all there. But at the bottom of the map, something strange appears. A massive landmass that looks exactly like Antarctica, drawn more than 300 years before its discovery. And it gets weirder, the coastline isn't covered in ice. Piri drew mountains, rivers, and valleys that match what scientists later found underneath Antarctica's frozen surface using radar in the 20th century. Somehow, he knew the shape of a continent buried under 2 miles of ice. In his notes, Piri said he had copied ancient source maps, which supposedly came from explorers of much older times, maybe even civilizations that no longer exist. Some believe these maps were relics from a pre-Ice Age world, proof that humans once sailed the globe long before recorded history. Skeptics think it's just a coincidence that Piri stretched South America too far south and accidentally created something that looks like Antarctica, but the coastline matches too neatly to fully dismiss. The truth is, no one knows how Piri got such details right. His map breaks the rules of history and geography all at once. Maybe he found fragments of lost knowledge, or maybe there was once a civilization that saw the world before it froze over. Whatever the answer, the Piri Reis Map still feels like a whisper from a forgotten age, one that reminds us we might not know the full story of our own planet. Number 9. The Vinland Map, when the Vikings beat Columbus. In 1965, Yale University revealed something that could rewrite history, a medieval map showing Europe, Greenland, and far to the west, a mysterious land labeled Vinland. That's the same place Viking sagas talked about, the lush land across the ocean reached by Leif Erikson around the year 1000. If genuine, the Vinland Map proved that the Vikings reached North America 5 centuries before Columbus. But things got messy fast. Scientists found traces of modern ink chemicals suggesting a possible forgery. Yet the parchment itself really was from the 1400s. Arguments exploded between historians, scientists, and museum curators. Some claimed the map was a real copy of an Old Norse chart passed through monasteries. Others swore it was a clever fake designed to stir controversy. Then, archaeologists uncovered Viking settlements in Newfoundland, proving Norse explorers had crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus. That discovery didn't solve the mystery, but it made the Vinland Map harder to dismiss completely. If it's fake, it's one of the smartest fakes ever made. If it's real, it means the Vikings mapped parts of the New World centuries before anyone else even knew it was there. The Vinland Map might never be fully proven, but it taught one important lesson. Sometimes one fragile piece of parchment can shake the entire story of how we discovered the world. Number 8. The Zeno Map, the Phantom Island of Friesland. In 1558, Niccolo Zeno published a map he claimed came from his ancestor, an explorer who supposedly sailed the North Atlantic in the 1300s. The map showed parts of Greenland, Iceland, and a mysterious island right between them called Friesland. Friesland looked so real that it appeared on European maps. For nearly a century, explorers even wrote about sailing near it. The problem? Friesland doesn't exist. Historians think the Zeno brothers may have invented the island to make their family look like legendary explorers. Others say they just misread Iceland, copying it in the wrong place. But the map's strange accuracy elsewhere makes that harder to believe. Greenland, the Faroe Islands, and parts of the Arctic are drawn in surprising detail. Impressive for the 1500s. That's why some believe Friesland might have been a real island, one that later sank beneath the sea or was erased by volcanic activity. Others say sailors may have mistaken Greenland's southern coast for a new land and gave it a new name. Whatever the truth, Friesland became a ghost island, a place that existed for centuries only because people believed it did. It's a perfect reminder that early maps weren't just tools for navigation, they were stories. And some stories were convincing enough to change the shape of the world, even if they were completely wrong. Number 7. The Orontius Finaeus Map, Antarctica before it froze. In 1531, a French mathematician named Orontius Finaeus drew a world map that instantly raised eyebrows. At first glance, it looked like a typical Renaissance chart with detailed coastlines, artistic flourishes, and lots of Latin. But then people noticed something strange near the bottom, a huge landmass labeled Terra Australis that looks suspiciously like Antarctica. Just like the Piri Reis Map, this one showed coastlines, mountain ranges, and river systems that matched modern Antarctic geography far too closely for coincidence. But here's the thing. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, nearly 300 years later. How could Finaeus possibly have known it existed, much less what it looked like under the ice? He wrote that his work was based on ancient charts passed down through unknown sources, which is just vague enough to make everyone go, wait, what? Ancient charts? Some researchers claim his version of Antarctica was drawn before the continent froze over, implying someone, maybe a lost civilization, mapped it thousands of years earlier. Others think he simply guessed there must be land down south to balance the globe, a common theory among geographers back then. Still, his version is weirdly precise. The proportions are off, sure, but the placement and shape line up way too neatly with what we know today. Was Finaeus a lucky guesser? Or did he have access to older, forgotten knowledge, the kind passed down through explorers who saw parts of the world that shouldn't have been reachable at the time? No one really knows. But every time scientists discover another ancient structure buried under ice or sea, the Orontius Finaeus Map feels less like imagination and more like a quiet reminder that history might not be as new as we think. Number 6. The Buache Map, the hidden land beneath the ice. In 1737, French geographer Philippe Buache presented a map that baffled his peers. It showed Antarctica split into two main landmasses divided by a long central sea channel that would have been a bold artistic guess, except that radar scans in the 20th century revealed the exact same thing under the ice. Buache claimed his map was based on ancient sources and geological reasoning, but he went a step further, describing valleys, basins, and rivers that wouldn't be discovered for another 200 years. Skeptics argue he just made an educated guess about Earth's southern land. But again, it's too close. His drawing of Antarctica's subglacial topography matches modern surveys better than any other map from his time. That's why some fringe theorists believe Buache had access to older records, possibly from civilizations that existed before the last ice age. Others think he just got incredibly lucky with his assumptions about continental structure. Either way, the Buache map is eerie. It shows a version of the world that technically no one was supposed to know. The land under Antarctica wasn't even visible to telescopes, not to ships, not to anyone. Yet somehow it's there on parchment from the 1700s. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder if knowledge doesn't just vanish, it hides, and sometimes it reappears in the hands of a curious geographer who shouldn't have known what he knew. Number 5. The Map of the Creator, the Carved Relief of Madness. In 1999, a group of Russian scientists found a giant stone slab near Bashkortostan with something carved into it that made their jaws drop. An ancient 3D relief map of the Ural Mountains, rivers, valleys, fault lines. Everything matched modern topography. Here's the creepy part. The stone was dated to around 120 million years old. That's before humans existed. Before mammals even had a chance to do taxes, locals called it the Map of the Creator. Some scientists thought it might have been formed by natural geological processes that just looked like a map. Others suggested it was carved by a lost civilization with technology beyond comprehension. If true, that means someone or something mapped Earth when dinosaurs still roamed it. Of course, skeptics argue that the age testing was flawed or that it's just pareidolia, humans seeing patterns where none exist. But still, the carving's precision is hard to explain away. The rivers and elevations align too well. Maybe a coincidence, or maybe, just maybe, someone long before us was looking down at Earth the way we do now from above. Number 4. The Dulcert Map, the Shadow of Lost Knowledge. The Dulcert Map of 1339 is one of those quiet enigmas that rarely make it into documentaries but shouldn't be ignored. Drawn by Angelino Dulcert in Majorca, it shows the Atlantic Ocean with islands that weren't officially discovered until centuries later. For example, the Azores appear with detailed shapes and names despite being discovered by the Portuguese almost 100 years later. Even weirder, there are outlines suggesting parts of the Caribbean and West Africa drawn far too precisely for medieval standards. So where did Dulcert get his info? Some believe sailors passed down maps copied and recopied over generations, ancient maritime knowledge trickling through time. Others whisper about older sources, civilizations that mapped the oceans before history began recording anything. It's tempting to see Dulcert as a man who stumbled onto inherited knowledge, something ancient that humanity keeps rediscovering and forgetting in cycles. His map reminds us of one haunting thought. Maybe we aren't progressing linearly at all. Maybe civilization rises, falls, and rises again each time, losing a little bit of what came before. Because when a 14th century man draws the edges of a world he was never supposed to know, it makes you wonder just how much of our forgotten past was once already found and then lost again. Number 3, the Cantino Planisphere, the map that shouldn't have existed. In 1502, an Italian spy named Alberto Cantino smuggled something that technically didn't exist, a top-secret world map stolen straight from Portugal's royal archives. The Cantino Planisphere showed the latest Portuguese discoveries, including the coastlines of Africa, India, and even parts of Brazil. Why was that a big deal? Because back then, maps were weapons. Whoever had the best map controlled trade routes, oceans, and gold. So stealing one was like hacking into a military database with ink and parchment. But there's a twist. The Cantino map also shows parts of South America and the Caribbean that no European should have known about yet. Even some Pacific coastlines appear vaguely sketched, as if the map maker had seen them, or at least heard from someone who did. That's where theories spiral. Some suggest Portuguese explorers reached further west than history records, maybe even sighting the Americas years before Columbus. Others think the info came from older, now lost maps passed down from ancient sailors who knew far more about the globe than we give them credit for. Whatever the case, the Cantino Planisphere shouldn't have existed, yet it did. It's a snapshot of knowledge that seems a few centuries too early, and it reminds us that history is sometimes written by whoever managed to hide their maps the best. Number 2, the Hadji Ahmed Map, the world before exploration. In 1559, an Ottoman cartographer named Hadji Ahmed created a world map that completely confused historians. It clearly showed North and South America with recognizable shapes, but in the mid-1500s, the western coastlines of both continents hadn't been properly mapped yet. So how did he know? Some claim Ahmed had access to old maps from ancient mariners, possibly from a pre-Columbian civilization that had already circled the globe. Others argue that he used reports from sailors who had reached those shores earlier than official records show. But here's where it gets weird. The map's accuracy extends to details of coastlines that weren't fully explored until the 19th century. The precision is way too high for the tools of the time, and Ahmed didn't even claim credit. He said he compiled it from earlier sources, ones he didn't name. Which means somewhere there could have been even older charts that have since disappeared. The Hadji Ahmed map is like finding a modern GPS file inside a medieval scroll. It's unsettling, and it adds another name to the long list of cartographers who somehow knew things they shouldn't, or maybe rediscovered knowledge that humanity had already lost once before. Number 1. The Waldseemüller Map, the map that named America. In 1507, two German scholars, Martin Waldseemüller and Matthias Ringmann, published a massive wall map of the world. It was the first to use the name America, but here's the bizarre part. It showed both North and South America as completely separate continents decades before explorers had any proof of that. How did they know? Officially, no one had even seen the Pacific Ocean yet. The Spanish were still bumping into the Caribbean, and Magellan's voyage around the world wouldn't happen for another 10 years, yet there it was, perfectly shaped Western Hemisphere. Historians say Waldseemüller probably used rumors, sailors' notes, and old maps to fill in the blanks. But the level of accuracy is eerie. The shape of South America is nearly perfect. Even the width of Central America roughly matches its actual width. It's as if someone had already circled the globe and handed him the data. Later editions of his map quietly removed the name America, as if someone told him he'd gotten too close to the truth. But the first version survived a single copy, discovered in a library centuries later. It's funny that Waldseemüller thought he was just labeling a small region after Amerigo Vespucci. Instead, he accidentally redrew the world, gave a continent its name, and left behind a mystery that modern historians still can't quite explain. Thank you for watching and sticking till the end. We've got plenty more videos coming in the future. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. See you in the next one.